Planned Parenthood. The name alone can ignite intense debate. Today, on today's episode of Line of Fire, we'll be discussing this nonprofit group and the pros, cons, and the impact it has on college students. All on today's Line of Fire. First of all, we just want to welcome today's guests. We have with us Nimike Okonkwo from Student Government, Caleb Scott, a member of Focus. We have Shelby Schramm, a member of the Pro-Choice Feminist Alliance, and Yassine Kandwala, a Model UN member. Guys, thank you all for coming in here today. So the reason, thank you. The reason that that Planned Parenthood is in the news today is we've all heard about the recent allegations of the videos that came out showing that they allegedly showing that they were trying to buy and sell fetal tissue. That aside, the group itself has always been in the news under intense scrutiny for its support of abortion. So let's go ahead and just start it off by, let's get everybody's take on what do you guys think about abortion? Are you for it? Are you against it? What are your thoughts?
Well, first off, I'd just like to note that, in my opinion, Planned Parenthood did not open its doors like in support of abortion. They did open their doors in support of women's rights and reproductive rights. So from that standpoint, I still believe that that foundation that Planned Parenthood serves is still strong and it's still its base. But to answer your question, personally, I am not in support of abortion, but legally I am, meaning I don't believe that the government has a right to tell a woman what she can or cannot do with her body. Not only that, what financial or economic choices that she can make.
I would also like to say that Planned Parenthood was, like, to back Nimike's quote, established to put women's reproductive rights on the table. But when it comes to the issue of abortion, personally, I'm very much against it. I've always have been, both personally and even in a legal sense, simply because I do believe that life does, begin at conception.
Shelby, what are your thoughts?
As president of Pro-Choice Feminist Alliance, I am pro-choice myself, and in regards to Planned Parenthood, the fact is that they are a healthcare provider, providing many services, and abortion is a health necessity that people need. And so it is a fundamental right that people have to have access to abortion.
I'm sorry, Caleb, finally, let's get your take.
I do sometime, if we have the time, want to talk about the origins of Planned Parenthood and Margaret Sanger and all of that. But for now, I'd like to just answer your question by saying that I believe anything that ends a human life, whether it is war or lethal punishment, or in this case abortion, is incredibly serious and needs to be looked at from every angle and needs to be taken very seriously. It isn't something that should be done for a simple reason. And in this specific instance of abortion, I believe that there is almost no reason to do so. There are a couple of arguments that I've heard, a couple of edge cases, but generally no.
So, like you guys mentioned, Planned Parenthood does a lot of things. It's not just abortions. That is a service that they do provide, but that is far from the only thing that they do. But for many people, that is the one issue that they specifically focus on when we're talking about this group. Why do you guys think that is?
Because it's obviously a point of contention, and it has been since before Roe v. Wade, since it was legal to have an abortion and get one safely. Practices have been trying to keep this healthcare procedure as safe as possible. I don't know if anybody's seen the studies, but a separate entity came out today stating that over 100,000 women in the state of Texas have already tried to self-induce abortions just after these laws have come about. So we're talking about a serious issue that's affecting people's lives, and how they can function and how they can go about getting education or taking care of their kids continuously. So it's important to take in multiple factors about how abortion fits into people's lives.
Yassine, sorry, what was your point?
Well, I was just saying that the reason why abortion has become such a hot button issue is, first of all, because of political reasons. You obviously have the Republicans who are very much against abortion and Democrats who are for abortion. Planned Parenthood essentially has become a battleground between the two political ideologies when talking about the issue of abortion, because they do provide that service.
Caleb, you're a member of the Fellowship of Christian University Students. So, seeing from the people that you associate with in that group, does your religious beliefs, does that play a role into which and how you feel about abortion?
Yeah, for sure, Eduardo. I believe that one of the strongest teachings that Jesus espoused was his love of the human life and the intense, incredible value that he placed on it, talking about slavery and other problems back then. But I believe that nowadays the easiest way to apply that principle is to ask ourselves the question, how should we treat human life? And I believe that every life, whether fetal or here talking to you today, is incredibly valuable. And I think that whether it's the 100,000 women in Texas who are trying to do their own abortions unwisely, or whether it's people who are going into Planned Parenthood, I think that abortion is treated too lightly and done and given too easily.
Interesting. So I guess what would you guys say then? Is this just something that should be looked at from a policy standpoint? Is it something that the religious aspect should be taken in? Because that is why there are quite a few. There are many of the supporters. I think it's safe to say do take a religious standpoint against abortion. So what do you guys think about that side of the debate?
Well, I think it absolutely must be from a policy standpoint, because as much as we all respect the opinions of Caleb and the opinions of people like Caleb, and we absolutely do, I absolutely do.
Right.
From a policy standpoint, I believe this is the only way to make truly effective positions on abortion, because this is America, and we all do not share the same. We do not all have the same moral beliefs or the same focuses, basically, as to what we hold morally, as to what our moral responsibilities are.
Yeah. Can I actually talk about that for a second?
Absolutely,
If you don't mind,
Yeah.
Nimiki? I think that we can all here agree that life is precious. I don't know if there's anyone here who would disagree with that statement, at least stated generally like that. And I think that that is an important central part that we can use religiously or not, no matter what foundation or faith you come from, because policies have to be built on ideals like that. Whether you're pulling them from religion or not, and there's a lot of argument to be had there for sure, you still need to base your policy strongly off of the benefit to the human lives that are underneath the rule of that government, and that includes prenatal lives as well.
Yeah, and just to piggyback, to piggyback
no.
on what Caleb is saying, I do agree with that. I do agree that this country was founded on sentiments much like that. The where I differ from it is that the moral stance that we take, individually, they do vary, and when it comes to policy, establishing policies nationwide on such a controversial issue like abortion. Just like Yassine mentioned earlier, it's a lightning rod, and it's a lightning rod for the general American public who may not spend the time to truly investigate, what circumstances lie behind woman A's decision or man B's decision, so on and so forth. So it's really a tool, and it's been used really effectively over the years to just, as Yassine mentioned, to start a firestorm.
Like, especially with that, talking about difference in religious perspectives as well, because there's a campaign out there that's the 1 in 3 campaign, which essentially says that 1 in 3 women throughout their reproductive lifespan will have an abortion in their life. So if you're talking about 1 in 3 women, of course the majority of those people are religious, because the majority of the people in this world are religious, and they're able to fit different aspects like of their cultures, of their religion together to find out what works best for them. And so like what you said, you have to take those different dynamics of people's lives and understand how that's working for them and how they make their own decisions.
So, Nimika, you said this was a topic that is contentious among the general public, but let's bring that down, shrink it down a bit. What have you guys seen here on campus at UTD, how do you see people react to this topic of abortions and how people actually feel about it?
Well, I would like to add in that because UT Dallas is mostly it leans liberal
Right.
on many issues. I mean, I meet people from all over the university who are, 100% pro Bernie Sanders people.
Right.
So because of that, I feel that the majority of UTD students are going to be in favor, are going to be more pro-choice. But the thing is that this also goes not just at UTD or among university students. It also goes upon the entire millennial generation. Because overall, the millennial generation is mostly socially liberal. The millennial generation socially is the most liberal generation that we've had since the silent generation. But fiscally and economically, the millennials are generally more conservative.
Right.
Although at university college students are going to be more liberal on economic issues.
Right. So what else is that? Are those the attitudes that you guys are seeing as well?
I definitely know that. I mean, from personal non-study research, you can go outside and look in a parking lot, and there are a number of cars with Democratic or Bernie Sanders bumper stickers. And so from just kind of that survey, you could see generally an estimate of where people stand. But I do think that we have a large, strong religious and ethnic population here who would disagree with that, whether it's on legally, because I know that you make the distinction between legal and personally, but I think that there's a large group of people who would be against ending human life on a personal level.
Right, and sorry to interrupt.
No.
But and just to reiterate what Nassim said is that I personally don't believe that it's a moral evolution, so to speak, that is happening in America. I think with our generation specifically, we're seeing changes that are generation specific. For example, people our age are getting married at a later time. People our age are having less children.
Right.
And I think, because of these factors, obviously, our take on such controversial issues like that are definitely going to differ from our parents and the people before them.
Shelby, your group is in the name specifically focused on being pro-choice. Why is that an issue for your group, and specifically, I guess, for college women?
We work under the framework of reproductive justice. So reproductive justice is meant to be an intersectional framework where you include racism, you include sexism, you include classism, you include ableism, everything like that, into how people can justly and control the way that their families and their reproductive health and everything like that goes into it, whether you need to get an education, whether you want to work, and what that means. If you can't afford to go to school, you have to work for your children. Like, how is that fair to you to move forward, with constant requirements that you need a higher degree and a higher degree or whatnot to be able to live in this country, period. So all of these things come together, and being pro-choice has historically, that movement behind it and having the access to abortion and things like that help women specifically and queer people move forward in their lives and take more economic ground, take more control of their lives.
Roe v. Wade is obviously, it's, I think it's fair to say, one of the most highly contested decisions that's ever been made in the Supreme Court, even to this day. Is there any middle ground between the pro-choice and pro-life side?
Oh, definitely. I definitely think that there can be a middle ground slide, because here's the thing. I think everyone who's here debating, and also the general population, can all agree that when a fetus is from 7 to 9 months about to come out, that when you do an abortion, the fetus will feel pain. All right. Now, at the same time, if you conduct the abortion in the first 2 weeks, I personally do not know, because I'm not a scientist. But I generally do not think that the the zygote's gonna feel any pain. I mean, personally, I do not know, but I'm just going off of what I know.
Well, but the problem there is that it's virtually impossible to detect pregnancy at 2 weeks because
yeah,
most of the
it
tests,
is, definitely.
yeah, most of the tests aren't going to really have effect until it attaches to the wall of the uterus. And after.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel that one way that we can do middle ground is sort of follow the framework of Roe v. Wade in a way.
Yeah.
Is that the woman will be allowed to have an abortion until, let's say this time period, let's say maybe 15 or 20 weeks. I mean, I want to ask you, can they detect the fetus by then? And if they do an abortion, will it feel pain?
Well, I mean, you can detect the fetus, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I obviously have no personal experience, but I did a good bit of research and have done a lot of research in order to form my own position. But the fetus can generally be detected in right after the first month of the first trimester, so 4 to 8 weeks, I believe. So
4 to 8 weeks.
It may be later on, if someone doesn't develop very strong symptoms, they may not even think to check for pregnancy for a while, until they miss their first period. So.
Okay, so going off of
Sure.
what he said, maybe I would say maybe after 20 weeks that the abortion should only be granted in cases of rape, incest, or if the mother's life is in danger. And let's say after 50 weeks or 60 weeks, then it should not be granted. I do feel that this is something that the general population can get behind in terms of trying to agree on when we should grant it and when we shouldn't grant it. Because obviously, if we make abortion completely illegal, I mean, I just feel that that's going to do a little bit more harm than it will do good.
Okay. I'm sorry. I want to actually direct your question to Namike, because one of the things that you had mentioned is you're against and this is the argument of many who are pro-choices, not wanting to tell a woman what to do with their body. So in terms of putting these restrictions, these barriers on when and when not abortions are illegal, what are your thoughts on that? And Shelby also feel free to answer.
Yeah, I think that for me personally, it's really difficult to imagine a world where we can find a middle ground between those who are pro-life and those who are pro-choice, because where a lot of the argument comes from are surround these definitions, such as what is a life, when does life begin, under what circumstances is it appropriate for a woman to have an abortion. It's these arguments that keep the fire going, and the more they persist, the more convoluted the entire subject continues. So from that standpoint, it's just really hard for me to see how a middle ground can be established.
And Shelby, what are your thoughts?
I'd also like to address sometimes the privilege in the room and what our lawmakers are as cis men, I assume. I don't want to insult anyone, about choices that you will never have to make in your life. Talking about putting limits on weeks and things like that is very dangerous, because if we talk about another intersectional aspect is what happens when a woman miscarries at a later week and then she's tried and put into prison for that. So what does that mean for her life, for her family, that that can happen, because it has happened to women already, that they miscarry and are said that they're inducing an abortion and putting a life in danger, and they're put into prison. So there's so many consequences that can occur when we start to nitpick and things like that about where things can go. So.
But that's the problem of arresting women who have had miscarriages isn't a problem of abortion legislation. It's a problem of whether or not investigators are actually doing their due diligence, whether or not they're checking or are able to check and see if that was induced or not. Because obviously if they're having miscarriages, then they haven't, and they're innocent of any crimes, even against like the laws that exist. So I think that that's not really what's at issue today.
But we're also talking about an intersectional issue that if this is a black woman, she's being put into a justice system that's not set up for her in the first place. So she will automatically
But again,
be
that's
judged
not really
on.
that's not really about abortion or Planned Parenthood. It connects slightly, but it's not really like at issue today.
Yeah, that's a separate issue when we're talking about criminal justice.
Well, let's let her finish her points.
Because I mean, that's the point of intersectionality, is that you can't just take one as the end all be all, that we're only talking about abortion legislation. You have to talk about everything that's going to happen behind that, everything that could occur. You have to think about every situation, and it's practically impossible. I agree with you, but you also have to listen to the people that it directly affects and who things have happened to. So this is what we have seen already happen.
Yeah, I would agree that you definitely have to listen to people and you have to tie the legislation in. I'm just saying that if you're trying to deal with miscarriage, that's something that the justice system needs to improve, perhaps better tests or that sort of a thing.
To answer my question, I guess there is some disagreement on whether on what, if there is a middle ground, which I think is one of the problems when we're talking about this.
Before you move on, I just wanted to address what we said earlier about men in positions of power in our federal system who are by and large making the decisions at the state level and at the local or federal level.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree that these men have no idea what it's like to have to think about these things and to make a decision that a woman would make. And I think that also speaks to the problem of some of the issues that we're having, like at the national level, is that looking around, watching the news, reading the newspaper, I find that the very same people who do not want a woman to go forth with an abortion are the same people that don't want to have anything to do with that child once that child enters the world. They don't want that child taking advantage of a lot of social programs like Medicare or welfare, Medicaid, welfare, things like that. They're against these policies that a lot of these women are currently in or will be forced into or dug deeper into once this child enters the world.
When you look at pregnancy rates among unmarried women, majority of them are going to be who are of a lower socioeconomic background. All right, so when these children are born, these children are going to be living in homes that are primarily going to have a single mother with no father. And the thing is that my response to that is adoption. Now there are reports about how children who live in adoption are often troubled. So I'm like, if we are, because personally, like I said, I'm very much against abortion, but I'm like, if we are to fix abortion policy, we should also fix the way our orphanages and our adoption system work.
The foster care system.
Foster care system. That way, when those children who are in those foster care systems, when they don't have families to be taking care of them, they're going to go out there in the world, and they're going to be the ones who are going to end up in prison. And because of statistics based off of the prison population, if they commit one crime, they're probably going to go back to prison again for committing other crimes.
Yeah. So for those who stand against Planned Parenthood and abortion, what alternatives are there? Are there any alternatives?
The thing about Planned Parenthood is that its job is actually already being done and better by what are called GQHCs, which is Government Qualified Health Centers around the United States. There are about 700, less than 700 actually, Planned Parenthood centers, including over 30 states that have less than 10 centers serving the entire state. Whereas in comparison, there are over 9,000 of these health centers. And these health centers do everything that Planned Parenthood does with the single exception of abortions. And so I believe that the fact that they're already seeing 8 times more patients than Planned Parenthood is, they're already helping people, they're offering mammograms. The fact that they're already here means that we have a viable alternative in existence for Planned Parenthood.
Right, I agree with you, Caleb. There are alternatives, but Planned Parenthood has such support from an affordability standpoint. Like there are many citizens, there are many women who would just would not have access to certain services if they were not able to attain them at Planned Parenthood. And I'm not talking about abortion, I'm talking about contraceptives or condoms for their partner, so on and so forth. Certain screenings, they just would not have access to these things without Planned Parenthood from an affordability standpoint.
Well, then,
I actually do want to say, you are saying about affordability. This is the reason why there should be alternatives. Because the best way, when you look at it from an economic standpoint, the best way to provide a certain product or service is if you have a market, if you have competition in the marketplace. What Planned Parenthood is right now is that in a way it sort of has an indirect monopoly. Why don't we instead let the private sector take over that? Because obviously there's a huge demand for it. Especially when you're away from an affordability standpoint, if you have competition in the marketplace for women's healthcare services and and products that women are probably going to need, they're going to be able to get the products they need at a price that they can pay because of competition.
That's a great point, but what we're talking about now as far as Planned Parenthood and the concerns surrounding it from those who run the branches and from the women who take advantage of the services there is that a lot of them, from what I've read, feel put out, for lack of a better term. They feel like, where are my alternatives? And Caleb, they're out there. I agree with you 100%. But this is what these women are feeling like. They're feeling like, I don't really know what my alternatives are, and if they are available to me, how can I afford them in the same way that I did when Planned Parenthood was in existence?
And we're also talking about public entities that accept Medicaid, Medicare, and things like that, right? And you're saying they see 8,000 or 8 times the amount of people. Well, what happens when Planned Parenthood closes and all of those people need to go to those places? Those
If you're
places
going
don't
to-
have enough space. Please let me finish.
no, sorry. Yeah, my apologies.
Those hospitals and things like that don't have the space or the time to see those people for regular, normal primary care checkups. You don't. Like, the next best place to get this influx in Dallas area is Parkland, and Parkland just built a new hospital because they were way too overbooked in their old hospital, and it's just going to probably make it a normal occupancy at this new hospital. That's how many people they see who are on Medicaid and things like that constantly. That these places have already said, we don't know what we're going to do with the people if Planned Parenthood, for these basic, regular primary care doctors and things like that, can't see them.
So then I would propose a solution for both the question that you're proposing and the problem that you see. Right now we're giving $500 million, around $500 million, to Planned Parenthood. I would say that we could remove that funding, removing a lot of the issue and debate around it, letting Planned Parenthood continue to do its job from whatever sources it has right now, and we would donate that money to the hospitals that you're talking about. We would donate it to increasing marketing and awareness for the health centers that already exist. Basically removing the problem by changing where the government funds.
Did you guys have any thoughts on that?
No, I think that, I totally agree. I have come across that number before. It's roughly $530 million in Medicaid reimbursements that Planned Parenthood receives yearly, and that may be a viable option.
Shub, did you have anything?
Yeah.
Also, that you're also talking about the majority of Planned Parenthoods are accessed by women in rural areas.
That was the
and
next
things
thing.
like
Sorry, that was the next thing that I wanted to bring up. Go ahead.
So yeah,
I
so
wanted to ask about.
So that, like, providing those funds to hospitals in main cities and things like that, it's still like an outreach to where someone can't even access to get to that hospital in time or something like that.
So obviously this is a huge topic, not just among college students, but like you said, in the general population. We have a presidential election coming up next fall. What do you guys think the role that abortion and this Planned Parenthood debates, what role do you think it will play in the 2016 elections?
From what I see right now, from both sides of the debate, I think that it is playing a lot more, at least slightly larger, in the Democratic debates, simply because the Democratic platform, like people like Sanders, Clinton, and O'Malley, who are currently in the race right now, their focus is are on things like income inequality and domestic policy. The reason why you're not hearing so much of what Planned Parenthood is doing on the Republican side is because their focus is more on national security and illegal immigration. So, and I also think that, and this is my personal viewpoint, is that you go to some of the if people were watching the 2014 midterm elections, you had two Democratic politicians that lost their bids because they put so much focus on women's reproductive services. Like, you obviously have Wendy Davis in Texas, who was putting so much of her focus on women's issues that she was not putting enough focus on education and illegal immigration. You go to, and you also go to, I believe it was Colorado, where you had Mark Udall, who was putting most of his campaign on women's issues, and that's the reason why he lost in an election that I feel he could have won.
So when you guys go to the polls, is how candidates, what their stance is on Planned Parenthood, is that something that affects your votes?
Yes.
Absolutely.
So is it to the point where like it's a deal breaker for you, Shelby?
Oh, yes, of course, for me.
Yeah. Well, what about the rest of you guys?
I don't. To answer your previous question, I don't really see at this point in time the way that federal and international affairs are operating. I don't see abortion and Planned Parenthood as being like a deciding factor once November rolls around. It's definitely something that is used, like we mentioned before, to start fires, get those early voters, coming out and get them at rallies and so on and so forth.
It's also gotten certain people in the door already.
Oh yeah,
Sure.
So.
yeah, sure. But come November, I don't think it's a huge factor once that election rolls around.
Caleb, what were your thoughts?
I think that me and Shelby can both agree that it's something very, very important, even though we stand on very opposite sides. But I believe that politicians will mostly be using this to gain easy votes. To be like, here's something that I agree with, that I know all of these people that I'm talking to agree with. Here's something that is wrong, that I know all of you think is wrong. Whichever side they're on, I think it's mostly going to be used in a very political way, without seeing a candidate who really is pursuing it. So for me, when I vote, I look down the list of all of the things that a candidate believes, and I do my best to find a candidate who has the closest affiliation with my beliefs, one of which is being pro-life, but it's not a deal breaker for me. It's just most Republican candidates are, so it's less important in that race, as you were saying.
I also think that to add on to what you were saying, is that I believe almost all the Republican governors in the race, when they were governors, I believe Chris Christie and George Pataki are the only exceptions from this. And maybe Jim Gilmore, but nobody talks about Jim Gilmore because we know who Jim Gilmore is. But I feel that Governor John Kasich of Ohio, Rick Perry of Texas, and Bobby Jindal, who actually just dropped out 2 hours ago. Even I was surprised.
Yeah.
They, in their states, they have defunded Planned Parenthood.
Interesting. Well, guys, like I said, we are almost out of time, but I want to give everybody just one more closing statement. So let's start with Namike, and what are your final thoughts for tonight's debate?
I think it was a good discussion. I'm really glad that two polarizing figures were here to share their ideas with us today. But I think abortion has always been a lightning rod fire starter issue, and just like Caleb said, it's a good thing to get those generally uninformed early voters out there. But come November, I don't really see it as as a huge factor in which way the presidential election goes.
Caleb?
I would say I'm a little sad that we didn't get to go really, really deep tonight. I know we don't have much time. There's a whole lot more to unpack here. I am glad that I got to hear from you, Shelby, and I got to hear from some people here in the middle as well about all sorts of different sides and different other issues that are connected in. I think that being a multifaceted issue, we have to try and boil it down to the simplest places that we can. How to best serve citizens, how to best preserve the lives of our citizens. And that's the issue that I stand on today.
Shelby, final thoughts?
Thank you for having me tonight. It was great to speak with all of you. My biggest, shout out is to work in your community, because that's where you learn these stories. This is where you engage with your community and you know what's happening to actual people on the ground and who this affects, what this what legislation does. And so, come and talk to me at PCFA if you need anywhere to volunteer or things like that to get your foot in the door to start changing some of these issues on the ground.
And Yasin, what are your final thoughts?
Well, I just want to say first of all, Esteban, thank you for having me here. It was very wonderful to hear from all of y'all. I was see, this is what makes America great. This is what makes our country, our state, we as people, just great. I mean, I don't have another word. The reason why is because we are all able to sit down and have a civil discussion. Because by having these civil discussions, we can know where people stand, and then we can get together. The greatest legislative accomplishments in American history have been through people sitting down, getting together, and agreeing and compromising. Our Constitution was founded on compromise. So I just want to say that, no matter what issue we are talking about, whether it is talking about the budget deficit or whether it is talking about the role of government, the key thing is that you sit down, you express your opinions, you know where you want to be heard, and then you get together and you compromise.
I think somewhere a bald eagle just shed a tear. I think that's very true.
Well, guys, once again, thank you for everybody, for all of our guests for coming in today. For UTD TV, I'm Sam Seals. Thanks for watching Line of Fire.